Michael a broker O'Sullivan and Liam the ghost Murphy weren't just criminals, they were the silent architects of one of Liverpool's most dangerous alliances. Behind closed doors, they built a network that stretched from the city's forgotten docks to the sun-drenched villas of the Costa del Sol. What began as a secret partnership would soon unravel into a deadly game of betrayal, violence and power, one that would change Liverpool forever. Liverpool in the 1990s was a city caught between two identities. On one hand, it was known for its music, football, and tight-knit communities. On the other, it was scarred by economic decline, unemployment, and rising crime. The docks, once the city's beating heart, had fallen silent, shipping jobs had vanished, leaving behind rusted cranes, empty warehouses, and thousands of men with nothing to do. It was in these forgotten corners that something began to stir, something darker, more organized, and far more dangerous than the petty street crime the city was used to. While car theft and burglary were still common, they were no longer the peak of the criminal world in Liverpool. A new generation was coming up, young, ambitious, and willing to take bigger risks. These were not the old-school hardmen who enforced rules with fists and fear. These were business-minded criminals looking beyond the city limits, thinking globally. They saw opportunity where others saw ruin. At first, it was small-scale cooperation. Smuggled cigarettes, bootleg alcohol, and occasionally, a bit of hashish, hidden inside crates of imported goods. But the real money came when harder drugs entered the picture. Heroin from Afghanistan, cocaine from South America, and cannabis resin from North Africa, all routed through Ireland, then into the UK via Liverpool. The old ferry routes suddenly took on a new meaning. What once carried tourists and traders now carried hidden packages worth millions. Few noticed at first. The changes were subtle. A new car on the estate, a holiday home in Spain, a cash-only business that never seemed to close. But behind it all, a quiet transformation was happening. Liverpool was no longer just a city with a crime problem. It was becoming a key player in a much bigger game, one that reached far beyond the River Mersey. The ferry crossing between Liverpool and Dublin had always been a symbol of connection, linking families, traders, and cultures across the Irish Sea. But by the early 2000s, that link had taken on a far more sinister role. The once innocent voyage had become a key artery in the flow of drugs, money, and violence between two criminal worlds. What began as a handful of smuggling runs evolved into a fully functioning route for organized crime, operating in plain sight. But as the money grew, so did the sophistication. Cars were modified with hidden compartments, ferry staff were bribed, and customs officials began to turn a blind eye. Soon the ferry wasn't just transporting drugs, it was moving people. Key figures from both sides of the Irish Sea used the route to plan and build trust. Some of these meetings took place in hotel bars and service stations. Others were held in remote countryside cottages, far from prying eyes. Police began noticing patterns, recurring number plates, repeat travelers, odd shipping manifests. But the operations remained a step ahead. The ferry was fast, cheap, and difficult to monitor. It was less suspicious than air travel and less risky than cargo shipments. For years it worked without interruption. It was more than a smuggling route. It was the foundation of a new cross-border alliance, one that would reshape the criminal underworld on both sides of the water. The sun-soaked coast of southern Spain had long attracted tourists and retirees. But by the mid-2000s, the Costa del Sol had also become a sanctuary for criminals. Among the million-euro villas and beachside cafes, a new class of expatriate arrived. One that wasn't there for the weather. Liverpudlian and Irish gangsters, flush with cash from their growing drug empires, began buying properties, setting up businesses, and blending into the luxury lifestyle. On the surface, it looked like success. In reality, it was a scam. Spanish authorities had been overwhelmed for years. The region, dubbed the Costa del Crime by British tabloids, had become a safe haven for fugitives due to lax extradition laws and rampant corruption. For the Liverpool-Irish alliance, it was perfect. They could live like kings, away from the scrutiny of home, while continuing to run their operations from behind high walls and private gates. Marbella, Estepona and Fuengirola became hotspots. Drug lords rubbed shoulders with celebrities and cash was poured into real estate, nightclubs and front companies. But these weren't isolated criminals living in hiding. The Costa del Sol became a central hub in their network. Meetings were held in rented villas under heavy security. Couriers flew in with encrypted phones and left with instructions. Shipments were coordinated from balconies overlooking the Mediterranean. With access to ports and connections in Morocco and South America, it became a strategic location for the import of cocaine and hashish into Europe. Boats would dock quietly under the cover of night. Their cargo quickly moved inland before any alarm could be raised. Despite the palm trees and private pools, tension was growing. Alliances made in Liverpool and Dublin were beginning to strain. Some factions wanted more control. Others believed they were being cut out of deals. Trust, once the backbone of the partnership, started to fray. One wrong word, one missed payment, could spark a violent response. Spanish police found themselves investigating a string of mysterious break-ins, disappearances, and targeted killings, but little was ever proven. Behind the scenes, old loyalties were being tested. Money and ego were now the driving forces. The Costa del Sol had become more than just a hiding place. It was the new front line in a criminal empire. And in paradise, the cost of betrayal was death. By 2006, the criminal alliance between Liverpool and Ireland had reached its peak. But with that power came paranoia. The money was enormous, the stakes even higher. Everyone wanted a bigger slice, and trust began to erode. Beneath the surface of luxury villas and perfectly organized shipments, a silent war was brewing, one marked not by open conflict but by disappearances, whispers and bodies turning up in unfamiliar places. The first major crack appeared when a senior Liverpool figure known in criminal circles as the Broker vanished in Marbella. He had been a key mediator between the Liverpudlian crews and Irish suppliers, respected for his cool head and deep connections. His job was to keep everyone in line, to make the deals work. But after a routine meeting at a golf resort, he was never seen again. No body, no ransom, no trace. Rumors swirled. Some said he had stolen from the wrong people. Others believed he was killed for knowing too much. His disappearance sent shockwaves through both sides. He had been considered untouchable, someone above the petty disputes. Without him, smaller crews began acting independently. That independence led to chaos. A cocaine shipment disappeared en route from Galicia. In response, 2 Irish gang members were ambushed and shot outside a Liverpool nightclub. The gunmen wore masks, but the message was unmistakable. The alliance was no longer secure. As suspicion grew, so did the violence. People started turning up dead in unexpected places, on hiking trails in the Spanish mountains, in canals outside Dublin, and in burned-out cars near Merseyside industrial estates. Few arrests were made. Witnesses stayed silent. Even within their own ranks, fear was contagious. Old friends began watching their backs. Meetings became shorter. Phones were swapped weekly. Loyalty was no longer assumed. It had to be proven again and again. The authorities struggled to keep up. On paper, the murders looked unconnected. But investigators working across Spain, UK, and Ireland began to see a pattern, hits carried out with professional precision, all linked to people once considered pillars of the drug alliance. The Broker's disappearance was more than just a loss. It was the spark that ignited a silent war. A war fought in shadows, without rules, where old alliances meant nothing, and survival became the only goal. Liverpool's docks had always been part of the city's identity, a symbol of its past strength and global reach. But by the 2010s, those same docks had taken on a darker role. While the cranes still moved and containers kept arriving, something had changed. Behind the steel fences and port security, the docks had become a crucial gateway for Europe's drug trade. The same shipping lanes that once brought prosperity now carried multi-million-pound shipments of narcotics, and the people moving them knew the system inside out. The criminal alliance had invested heavily in the port, not through official ownership, but through control. Dockworkers were approached and offered easy money for small favors. Look the other way, turn off a camera, delay a container inspection. For some it was a chance to clear debts. For others it was fear disguised as opportunity. Once they accepted, there was no going back. A single mistake could mean their name added to a growing list of unexplained deaths. Containers would arrive marked as carrying fruit, textiles or building materials. Inside, expertly concealed behind false walls or within pallets of legitimate goods, were hundreds of kilos of drugs, mostly cocaine and cannabis resin. Sometimes heroin. The containers came from places like Brazil, Morocco, and Spain, routed through several ports to throw off suspicion. By the time they reached Liverpool, they had passed through multiple countries and several layers of forged paperwork. In one major bust, in 2010, customs officials acting on a tip intercepted a shipment labeled as bananas. Hidden beneath the crates was half a ton of uncut cocaine, with an estimated street value of 40 million. The news made headlines, and for the public, it looked like a major win for law enforcement. But within days, the mood on the streets turned cold. The gangs knew someone had talked. 2 weeks later, a former dock worker was found in his car in a quiet industrial estate, shot twice in the head. No fingerprints, no CCTV, no suspects. The killing wasn't just punishment, it was a message to anyone else thinking of cooperating. The port remained operational, but a cloud of fear hung over it. The docks were no longer just part of Liverpool's heritage, they had become the beating heart of its underworld. As the drug trade grew, so did the need to hide the vast amounts of cash flowing through Liverpool and beyond. Handling millions of pounds in illegal profits required more than just street-level deals. It needed experts who could make dirty money appear clean. That's where the accountant came in. Behind a quiet office in central Liverpool, a man with a spotless suit and a calm demeanor ran one of the most important parts of the operation: money laundering. This Irish-born accountant had fled to Liverpool after trouble back home. Known for his skill with numbers and his ability to stay invisible, he quickly became indispensable. His job was complex, but clear. Take the enormous profits from drugs and funnel them through legal businesses, fake charities, and offshore accounts. He bought properties, invested in new companies, and even dabbled in cryptocurrency to cover tracks. The accountant's spreadsheets were filled with fake invoices and shell companies, creating an intricate web that made it nearly impossible for the authorities to follow the money. For years his system worked flawlessly. Large sums of cash moved smoothly through bank accounts, turning into legitimate profits. Some businesses looked suspicious: cash-only pubs, import-export firms with no real goods, but the accountant always stayed one step ahead, adapting to new rules and cracking encryption on digital transactions. But greed, as it often does, became his undoing. Somewhere along the way £2 million went missing from the accounts. Whether it was stolen or lost due to careless bookkeeping, no one knew. What was certain was that the cartel was furious. This was no small mistake. It was a betrayal. Not long after the missing money was discovered, the accountant was found dead in his Liverpool apartment. His laptop lay open on his desk, the screen frozen on a password prompt. Despite efforts, the password was never cracked, and the key to the missing millions disappeared with him. There were no known address and no social media presence. What he did have was a chilling reputation. Investigators linked him to at least 3 shootings, each executed with cold precision. CCTV footage captured a shadowy figure in a hoodie, moving calmly through streets before and after the attacks, never seen nor caught. How someone so young could operate so effectively puzzled authorities. Some believed the ghost was a hired assassin, trained by older gang members to do their dirty work while staying under the radar. Others suspected he was motivated by a desire to climb the ranks quickly, proving his loyalty through violence. Either way, his emergence marked a dangerous shift in the underworld. where teenagers could become killers, and fear spread among both criminals and civilians. Rumors suggested the ghost had connections to both Liverpool and Dublin, traveling between the cities to carry out orders. Some said he was even used to settle scores within the gang, eliminating rivals who were once friends. His name was never officially confirmed, and no arrests were ever made in connection with his crimes. Some believed he vanished after one final job, possibly fleeing to Ireland, or worse. By 2015, the authorities had grown tired of watching the Liverpool Irish drug network operate with near impunity. Years of investigations, arrests, and missed opportunities had only slowed the cartel, never stopped it. That year marked the launch of Operation Skylark, a joint effort between British, Irish, and Spanish police forces determined to finally break the alliance's grip on the drug trade. Operation Skylark was a massive undertaking. It combined traditional surveillance with cutting-edge technology. Police used drones to monitor suspected safe houses along the Costa del Sol, tapped hundreds of phones, and placed undercover agents in key locations across Liverpool and Dublin. The coordination between countries was unprecedented, reflecting the international nature of the crime network. For months, every move the cartel made was tracked. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A low-level courier was arrested in France, while trying to cross the border with a package of cocaine. During the arrest, officers found his phone, an encrypted device filled with coded messages and photos. Decrypting the phone took weeks, but what they uncovered was explosive. Detailed plans for shipments, names of couriers, routes, and even meeting points were revealed. Most importantly, a safe house in Costa del Sol was identified as a hub for the operation's leaders. A raid was swiftly organized. Police stormed the villa, finding stacks of cash, drug paraphernalia, and files containing blueprints of Liverpool's docks and shipping yards. But the most damaging find was a sealed envelope with a list of names, people suspected of being corrupt officials, dockworkers, and even one retired detective. The presence of the detective shocked investigators, showing just how deep the corruption ran. Following the raid, dozens of arrests were made across 3 countries. Some members fled, some turned informants, and some were quietly eliminated before they could talk. Yet, even with so many taken down, the network refused to disappear. Smaller crews took over territories, and the business adapted. Operation Skylark was the biggest blow to the cartel in years, but it was far from the end. The investigation exposed cracks and chaos within the alliance, but also revealed how resilient and deeply embedded the network truly was. The war against Liverpool's Irish links had only just begun. After the arrests made during Operation Skylark, the once tightly knit alliance between Liverpool's gangs and Irish crime families began to fracture. The power vacuum left by imprisoned leaders created chaos, with smaller factions scrambling to claim control over the lucrative drug routes and territories. What had once been a smooth-running operation was now a battlefield marked by greed, betrayal, and violence. In Liverpool, rival crews, who had been kept in check by the old guard, started fighting openly for dominance. Shootings and stabbings increased, spreading fear not just among criminals, but also within local communities. The docks, once a hub of smuggling and control, became contested ground. With the original alliance weakened, customs and laws tightened their grip, making every shipment riskier and more expensive. Meanwhile, across the Irish Sea, fractured Irish gangs struggled to regroup. Some decided to focus on smaller, local operations, while others sought new international partnerships, turning to Eastern Europe and Scandinavia for alliances. These shifts further weakened the Liverpool-Irish bond. What had once been a powerful transnational network was breaking down into smaller, more unpredictable groups. Yet even amid the chaos, new figures emerged. Young leaders, some barely out of their 20s, started to rebuild connections and push for control of the old routes. These new players were more ruthless and less cautious. They didn't have the old networks or the respect the previous generation commanded, but they had something else, a willingness to use extreme violence and technology to dominate. Police struggled to keep pace with the rapid changes. Intelligence became harder to gather as communication shifted to encrypted messaging apps and coded language. Meanwhile, community trust in law enforcement remained low, making it difficult for officers to get information from residents living in fear of retribution. As the old alliance crumbled, the criminal landscape grew more fragmented and dangerous. The violence spilled over into everyday life, and the city's Irish links were no longer just a secret alliance, they had become a fractured web of conflict. The quiet power that once ruled in the shadows was now a noisy, brutal struggle for survival. The underworld of Liverpool and Ireland was changing forever. Years after the downfall of the original cartel leaders, the legacy of Liverpool's Irish links remained deeply embedded in the city's fabric. The story was no longer just about drugs or smuggling routes. It was about the hidden alliances that shaped the city's underworld and the ongoing struggle for power beneath the surface. What began as a partnership had evolved into a complex, fractured network that stretched across borders, blending legitimate businesses with illegal enterprises. Despite law enforcement's best efforts, the cartel's influence persisted in new forms. Front companies operated openly, masking illicit activity behind the veneer of export firms, construction businesses, and nightclubs. These legal enterprises allowed criminals to launder money and maintain control over communities. The docks continued to be a strategic asset, though heavily monitored, and the Costa del Sol remained a favored refuge for those seeking to escape the law. The most surprising twist in this story was how ordinary people, often unknowingly, became entangled in the web. Taxi drivers, shopkeepers, and even local politicians sometimes found themselves pressured or coerced into cooperating. Fear and loyalty intertwined, creating a code of silence that made breaking the cycle incredibly difficult. For many, the cartel wasn't just a criminal organization, it was part of life. In recent years, new technology and social media have changed how these networks operate. Encrypted communication, cryptocurrency, and online marketplaces have added layers of complexity that law enforcement struggles to penetrate. At the same time, younger generations are both inheriting and reshaping the criminal landscape, sometimes embracing the legacy, other times rejecting it. The story of Liverpool's Irish links is far from over. It's a tale of ambition, betrayal, and survival, but also one of communities caught in the crossfire. The alliances forged in secret have left scars, but they have also shown resilience. What remains clear is that beneath the city's surface, a hidden world still thrives, one where loyalties are tested, power is contested, and the past never fully disappears. The final chapter is unwritten, and the shadow of the cartel continues to loom large over Liverpool and beyond.